This podcast is brought to you by Hoare Chartered Accountants. Hoare Chartered Accountants are based in Galway City and are a leading provider of audit, accountancy and taxation services. For more information, visit hoarecharteredaccountants.ie.
You're welcome along to the Maroon and White pod. So it was disappointment for Galway in Croke Park on Sunday, no point in saying otherwise. Kilkenny were much better. There was a strong last quarter from Galway, but it wasn't enough in the end, and Kilkenny won their sixth Leinster title in a row. So Galway will now enter the All-Ireland series at the quarter-final stage, where they're going to play Tipperary or Laois on Saturday week. A venue there yet to be decided. It looks like it could be Monday before we get the venue for that. I'm joined by sports journalist John Fallon and MacDonncha of TG Car to look back on the Leinster final. John, coming to you first, no point in saying otherwise. Disappointing, really, on Sunday.
Totally and absolutely. I look at it no more than MacDara, and we're former schoolmates. Like, we've been covering Galway hurling for over 40 years, and even when we were younger, following it as well, the guts of 50 years looking at this. And I see the Leinster final now the way we used to view the All-Ireland semi-finals, back up to Galway going into Leinster. So you were never quite sure what way they were going to measure up or what Galway team would turn up. And at various stages, they go through transition, etc., etc. And there's always been at lovely intervals where they come with there's low expectation and they take out a Kilkenny or a Cork or a Tipperary. And I think a huge number of the Galway supporters going to Croke Park last Sunday actually thought they were going to have one of those days. Everything suggested a Kilkenny win, but a lot also sort of was building up that this Galway could do what they did many times before. Equally so, there've been many days we've gone there hoping, maybe not necessarily to win it, maybe sort of realising they mightn't win or even an All-Ireland semi-final back in the day, but that you would deliver a performance that you'd say, geez, next year this will really do. So none of those happened. We saw the potential for a shock, maybe the opening 10 minutes and that blistering 10-minute spell in the second half. And for the remainder of the game, you just wondered where any of this was going. They were just so far off the mark for that time. Positions were moved around that you thought maybe during the league and those run of games from the opening loss to Kilkenny right up to this, right through. But I was looking through it, like, to go 37 minutes without scoring from play in a Leinster final on not the most difficult day. There was a bit of a breeze, and I know it cost both free takers as well. 37 minutes without playing a Leinster final. And then the other damning one, that from the 16th minute when John Fleming scored until the 59th minute when Sean Lennon scored, only one Galway player scored in that time, and that was Cathal Mannion, most of them coming from frees. And you sort of wonder in the end, they actually did well only to lose by 8 points when you start putting all that together and the potential that Kilkenny had it. And I think not for the first time, Galway supporters, a lot of whom left early, came back down to Galway with more questions than answers and just sort of, gosh, where do we go from here? And it'll take a fair effort to get it right for couple of weeks' time, which will probably be Tipperary, unless there's an almighty shock from Laois. So I think Galway supporters are more confused now than they have been in recent years. And I'm not even sure how much is riding on the Tipperary match. Like, they'll need a performance and all that. But I think there's a lot of disillusioned Galway hurling people this week.
Yeah, I think there is a strong amount of frustrated supporters, and even putting up the question box for the podcast, there's a lot of people frustrated. And even before the game there, MacDara, as John mentions, like when Owen Cody was out, it seemed to give Galway supporters a bit of a lift. There was a bit of anticipation, nearly similar to, I'd say, nearly 2012. People genuinely going up thought there would have been a shock, but there was never really going to be a shock in this game the way it unfolded.
No, not the way it unfolded, but if you take back to start of the year, like desperate performance against the first one was against Tipperary, hammered, then recovered a bit again, bit clearer, and then Kilkenny, they played Kilkenny in Nolan Park in the league game. Gavin Lee was centre back and he played well. Porrick was beside him. One of the reasons he played well, Porrick Mannion. And you were saying to yourself, there was a bit of cutting here at that stage. Keenan Fahey and Tom Monaghan were midfield were going well, and you were saying do you know, there's something here we could build on. And then they stayed with Gavin, but they shipped a few heavy defeats then in the league. And then we were kind of saying, well, sure, look, they have regained status, Division 1 status, so they don't really care about the last two games. And the first championship game then against Kilkenny like was quite disappointing in Nolan Park. Like Kilkenny won it really hands up. Now on the same day, if you look back on it, Kilkenny got 3 goals. All 3 goals were down to fairly basic errors, and so anyway, you know they didn't play well. And I still remember because I was there. They played Offaly the following week. Jesus, we were kind of anxious going to Tullamore to take
Yeah.
on Offaly. How would Offaly get on? No, they bet Offaly up a stick the same day. And then the big one then was the Wexford run, I suppose, which they won handy. That's the day that Cahill just showed all his class, like did the job against Antrim. And then the Dublin game, which I was also at, they played well. They played well against Dublin. So there was a bit of hope going up against Kilkenny because they were saying they're getting a bit of momentum. But I think there was false hope because I suppose really the quality of the teams that they beat after playing Kilkenny were simply not good. Dublin had a stinker. I remember I said to somebody on the day, you know, the way it makes sometimes throwaway comments. I said Dublin must have made about 50 basic errors. So I actually looked at it forensically afterwards, and they made 53 basic errors between dropping the ball, overhitting passes, bad wides, you know, this sort of stuff. And I think maybe we got slightly carried away with Galway. Now, looking at Sunday, the first half, like, was nearly like a tournament game. There was no cutting in it at all. They were holding their own in a poor game. Kilkenny did a lot of wides. I think it was 9 wides they had the first half. So then the goal came, which was preventable.
The manner of the goal is definitely preventable.
You know, and that left them 4 up at half time, and you're saying, right, is it beginning to slip? But the really disappointing part was, John touched on it there, like the first 20 minutes of the second half were awful. I mean, time and time again, we saw aimless passes. I mean, how many Kilkenny lads, the ball was just struck straight at them. And how many Kilkenny points were scored by lads who were standing absolutely on their own, nobody near them. They could have, as I say, they could have knelt down and said a decade of the Rosary and sang Ireland's call and still had enough time to hit the ball, you know. So, and that was disappointing. And then to really frustrate us then all the further, you see the 10 minutes where they kind of cut loose. And that's what's frustrating. I mean, they didn't do themselves justice. And it's but look, as John said, we're 50 years watching Galway, and unfortunately, we're used to it.
Yeah.
Doesn't make it any easier.
That is the frustrating thing when you think of it there. Like, how do they try and recover and regroup here, John?
I think it'll be very difficult in fairness because, like as MacDara was saying there, at various stages, Jordan, even allowing for the inconsistency during the league and indeed some of the games in Leinster, you felt a lot of positions and a lot of things were being sorted out. Gavin Lee settling in at centre back, TJ Brennan, I thought, had a very good game on Sunday, doing well there. Conor Whelan in this new role in the half forward line, winning an awful lot of ball. And you sort of said, there's a lot being built around that. But I think the other part of it as well that struck me afterwards was there's a lot of talk about this team being in transition, but it's not really that much in transition. If you look at the match day squad last Sunday, Galway used 18 players in the 2017 All-Ireland final. There was 18 players, 15 started, 3 came on. 7 of those were in the match day squad last Sunday. 5 of them started. And I suppose really if you go down through it, probably only the likes of John Fleming and Anthony Burns you would describe as new players this year. And it's a little bit scary in a way when you go back through a few of the other players that you sort of think are sort of new, but you realise this is their 4th or 5th championship. And we're probably we're no nearer now a settled team than we were at the start of the Leinster Championship or at the start of the league or a year ago or a year before that. So had a young team gone out there that, were 6 or 7 sort of Leinster final debutants and stuff like that and got beaten, you'd say, well, they can learn a lot from that. But a lot of these lads actually have been around a bit. Players tend to just go in and out of it a lot. Tiernan Killeen, I thought, did very well when he came on. came on the last day. But obviously there was a reason he wasn't selected as well. Cathal Mannion, as MacDara said, like he's been Galway's saviour this year. If we had two Cathal Mannions and two Conor Whelans, you'd be in a totally different position in all of that. There was a couple of frees at the same time missed, no more than TJ Reid the last day, and you sort of say, "Gosh, where's Evan Nyland? Where's he? Is he injured? Is he just gone off? From a guy that you felt a lot was being built around in recent years. So you're getting a high turnover of players as well, and there's a short space of time to turn this around. They're going to be playing, as we said, it's going to be Tipperary unless Laois pull off an unmerciful shock, and let's face it, they're not going to after last Sunday against Kildare. Um, they're not a Clare, they're not a Limerick, they're not a Cork, so
Yeah.
it's not an unwinnable match by any manner of means. But what do you do? What way? I don't envy Micheál Donoghue and his selectors in trying to pick and lay out a team from scratch and really have only this week, and with all the negativity around it, it's going to be an extremely difficult task. And I think every second supporter you will meet will offer you a different opinion as to where Conor Whelan should start, what role he should play. Do you put Cathal Mannion in the full forward line where he became so effective when he went in there? Who's your centre back now against Tipperary? You have just so many positions, to go with. You start with a brilliant full back line, Pádraig Mannion, Daithí Burke, Fintan Burke. Yes, TJ Reid, before he got the goal, I thought was hard done by. To be honest, I thought he was fouled when Pádraig Mannion and Daithí Burke were in. A lot of referees might have given us a score or a free the other way in it. They didn't, but moments later when the ball came into him, any other player you would imagine would have just tapped over and taken his point. Especially after getting bottled up and losing it. But he's not just 37, he is such an experienced player with it. We see it with Patrick Horgan with Cork as well, like these guys, and the killer instinct is there. Now, it was a magnificent save by Ian Murphy, but there was nobody there to prevent the rebound at the same time, and you've just a lot of that. It cost the goalkeeper as well. He should go off injured into the bargain. Now you're down to your third choice. And it was so unfortunate what happened to Ara Walsh in it.
Yeah.
And other than that, I'm not going to say another word on it because I think the sooner we all move on from it, it was just a freak in the whole lot of it. But you just have a very difficult task for the Galway management, a very short space of time, because if they don't get it right, 2025 ends on Saturday week, and that's it. And you have another 6, 7 months of postmortems that we've had for how many years running now. So there's a lot riding on this one, but as I said, I don't envy them. I wouldn't even know where to start picking that team.
MacDara, one of the big issues for me at the minute is midfield. Even if you look at the weekend, David Burke was pulled early. Ronan Glennon came in, he brought energy to it. Sean Lennon was there. But outside of that, like there wasn't any other midfielders in the 26.
Well, see, if you look at, I think by the end of the game now, I'm open to correction on this. The diamond 6, 8, 9, 11, they were all changed. That's your diamond that's winning matches. Feel like that you have to have functioning well to win any match. So you had a new centre back, you had a new midfield pairing, and you had a new centre forward. And it's as John was saying there, it is very difficult. Now I think short term measures, man who has played there most of his club hurling at centre back, and that's Pádraig out to centre back, Pádraig Mannion. I think he's used to playing there.
Is Gavin not seen as the long term?
I don't think so now, unfortunately. No,
Okay.
I would have said so. I remember seeing him that day. I was working at it the day in Kilkenny, the league match, and I said, "Geez, here we have a centre back, But I think he's more of a forward instinct than a defender's instinct, and you can't really function at centre back unless you go back to the old sweep problems, somebody playing behind him. And I think he has a future with Galway, but I don't think he has a future at 6. But I think short-term measure now, I would be saying put Pádraig out there. Darren Morrissey played quite well when he came on.
Yeah.
So if Fintan is okay, you can put Darren into the full back line. And I think you'll have to put Pádraig at 6. They did try Cianan Fahey there. I prefer to leave Cianan Fahey at 5 because I thought he was doing quite well at 5 in the championship games. And I would put Pádraig at 6.
But
For
the
starters.
biggest the biggest problems are not in defence. The biggest problems is a half forward line that's not able to win their own puck out and drill balls into it. Like I thought the way Kevin Cooney started, first couple of balls he got a point off it, he just looked sharp, he looked, and you just say, just drill ball in there. He didn't see that
Even though
ball.
when he went quiet from being at the game, he went quiet because he didn't get ball. It
He got
wasn't.
no ball. There was
Yeah,
Agreed. I
absolutely
don't know. Did you see?
nothing.
Did you see Christy O'Connor's statistic on yesterday in the Examiner? 7 balls went in to Kevin Cooney in the entire game. He got 3
Right.
points and he was fouled for 3 frees.
Yeah, yeah.
Fouled
I
for 3
hadn't
points.
seen that, but I just thought, you were looking for early signs, that this could be Galway's day, and you sort of say, wow, and I've seen Kevin Cooney a lot over the years. I've seen him a lot with Sarsfield. I actually always thought his best position was further out the field with Sarsfield. He was more effective with it, but you suddenly thought, gosh, if you have Kevin Cooney at left corner forward causing trouble to a Kilkenny corner back, and you're sort of guaranteed what Whelan will do, and you're guaranteed what Cathal Mannion, you're now sort of manoeuvring quite well along the way there. I think to go back to Paul's question there with regard to how you line out a team against Tipperary and stuff like that. I think one thing that might be to their advantage is because Galway supporters don't know what way to line out a team. Tipperary won't know what is coming, what sort of format that will be. Kilkenny did, because this Galway team that started last Sunday sort of fell into a slot during the Offaly games, the Dublin games.
Yeah.
They played a sweeper from the start that Galway just didn't seem to be able to handle. They knew that would nullify an awful lot. Um, so Kilkenny had their homework done in Galway, much more so. I think Tipperary will find it a bit more difficult because, um, gosh, can we name one Galway player who we know will start in a position in that, because it could be all over the place. So that could work to their advantage going into it. But I think that was it the first 12 puckouts that Galway took, they only won 5 of the first 12. Modern game, possession game, you're not going to whether you went short, it didn't work, whether you went long. Um, so you're taking in water from an early stage then. So we shouldn't be surprised that they went long spells without scoring. We shouldn't be surprised that the supply of ball into a Kevin Cooney didn't, because you were losing your own primary possession in it. And in fairness to Kilkenny, and maybe they haven't been given the credit. They had their homework done and had it off to a T. And you look at the role Adrian Mullen. I thought he played a very similar role to what Conor Whelan was doing for Galway. Um, but Adrian Mullen picked off 4 points from play on top of everything else that he did with it. And that's a different level of performance to what his Galway equivalent was doing. Even like Whelan, I thought, particularly in the opening half, was absolutely outstanding. As indeed he's played that role with it. But you know, too many of his teammates weren't at that pitch. They weren't at Cathal Mannion's pitch. They weren't at, to a lesser extent, but TJ Brennan's pitch as well in it. And you're not going to win championship games when there's too many below that level of it.
when you're mentioning there about Gavin maybe further forward, do you think maybe midfield now could be a position for him?
To a certain extent, it could be like nearly putting a few straws into a bucket and picking out a straw. Right? Okay, we'll put you there. As John said, right? He's right. It is, yeah, very few. I mean, if you go through it, Pori could be 2, 5, 6, 7. Dahi could be 3, 2, 3, 4, even maybe at 6. Finton could be anywhere. Yeah, when you go through them all, it's very true. TJ Brennan would probably be safe to say he would be at 7. But if you keep going on then afterwards, there's very few, because I mean Cahill could play anywhere, so could Conor Whelan play anywhere. So yeah, it is, and it's a slight advantage. But of course, yeah, Tipperary won't know what's happening, but Galway mightn't know what's happening either. This is always the problem when you have to do so many dramatic changes. Or does Mihal get them together and say, lads, you have 70 minutes to redeem yourselves? Because they do, unfortunately, that's the reality. They do have to redeem themselves. No, they're lucky that they've one more chance. In the old days, going back to the old days in semi-finals, if they played poorly, they nearly a year to wait. So they have a chance here. They lifted for Tip. Tip will hammer. I was in Tullamore 2 years ago when Tip played Offaly, who had lost the Joe Mack final. was it 2 or 3 years ago? And they absolutely bet the lard out of them, and they were baying for goals, and that 6 goals got. Seamus Callanan came on as a sub, and nothing would do the tip faithful until Seamus Callanan got his goal, and they bet them by something like 40 points. And then Galway bet them 2 weeks afterwards. And Galway have, in the past, quite often, followed an insipid performance with an excellent performance.
Yeah.
But the biggest worry is, and the two of you think about this now, when last did you go to a Galway championship game in hurling where you were, without being complacent or overconfident, you were confident that they were good enough to win it, that they showed up, played well, and won the game? That probably hasn't happened since 2018. 2018 was probably the last time when we played
Yeah.
Kilkenny and got over clear. A bit lucky to get over clear in the All-Ireland semi-final, but that's probably the last time that we went to a match confident that they'd play well, and that they'd win, and that those things happened.
Well, they haven't won in Croke Park since the Leinster semi-final 2020.
Yeah,
9
against
times
Leinster,
back
yeah.
there, lost 8, drawn 1. So that in itself, doesn't exactly inspire confidence in it. But at the same time, I wouldn't be all doom and gloom in it, because I think anyone that's followed Galway hurling would realise you take any of those 15 that were started last Sunday, and at various stages throughout this year and the last couple of years, you've seen big performances from those players. The Sean Lenans, the John Flemings, Kevin Cooney we mentioned, Keenan Fahy, Gavin Lee, all of that. It's just, when a team gets a measure of you, as Kilkenny, as only they can do, did last Sunday, and had their homework done into it or whatever, they can unravel an awful lot of that. But I think what really is frustrating Galway supporters, not just this year, but in the last few years, I think they feel, and with some justification, that the sum of the parts is not adding up to a lot of the what's there as well. That it's just not gelling or clicking into that. That there is somewhere hidden in that there's actually a good team. I just think last Sunday was just a day where just so much of it unravelled, and that's why this tip match, as we keep saying, presuming it'll be Tipperary, is a huge match. Even if they don't win it, the manner in which they lose it, if it came to that, is of importance as well. You win that, you're into an All Ireland semi final. You're gonna grow as well into it. But I don't think Galway supporters have been so far away from being able to select a team for many years that you put players into it or anything like that. And that'll be the key thing, is what 15 and where they start into all of this is gonna tell us a lot. I mean, I would imagine there's a lot of frustrated players outside that 26 who would feel they should be getting a look into it. I think they may be looking at the likes of Jason Flynn and Conor Cooney, been in the 26 last Sunday and yet not being brought on. So what's that doing to build the team for next year and the year after and the year after that as well? And so not even who the 15 are, but who the 26 are for this next game is going to be. As I said, I don't envy Micheál Donoghue or any of them involved in it, because it's a very difficult task, and the evidence that they're picking from is fairly inconclusive, I think, after last Sunday.
I wonder, would they try a few curveballs, John? Would they try the likes of Jason Rabbit for his ball winning ability? Maybe throw in Aaron Nyland, just throw in guys. I
I
think
don't
we
think
are
they'll
going to
throw in.
see, at the end of this year anyway, I think we are going to see a fairly radical shake-up, I would imagine, of the Galway panel. And you will see new lads coming in. Like Micheál was given a four-year term, and I think this year to ease in. And I think when he went in there before, it was in his second year that he dropped a
That is
number of the
quite
established
true.
players.
A lot of other managers do it straight away
Yeah.
and start that process in it. And you're absolutely right. When he went in before, there was very little change the first year, and then the second year there was a fair shaving
Yeah.
off it that autumn, I remember. And I know they were saying all the stuff, oh, these lads, could come back in. Everyone knew in their heart and soul they weren't coming back in, and they didn't. And it was a bit of softly let them down. And I think they're going to have no choice, if it's going to be to build on that. I think it's part of it as well, if they threw in a couple of young players who had their moments, and you still ended up not, you ended up losing. You say, well, actually, that's building. Those lads will learn from. We've seen a lot of that in the Galway footballers, actually, in the last few years, where lads have gone in, maybe had a game or two, and maybe had to drop off it and came back into it or whatever. So you could see a bit of that, but it's you sort of I'm talking to an awful lot of Galway supporters. I think a lot of them would say, what have we to lose by throwing a curveball or two into there, or you know like where is this string of minor All Irelands, where are all those players coming from, or whatever? What have you to lose at this stage, by taking a chance in something like that?
Yeah.
I think the big thing though with some of those 20s, even if you compare it to the tip 20s, they're all in their last year 20s. They're coming on the back of winning All Irelands. If you look at all those 20s, Rory Burke has been on a couple of the 26s and he's got a few minutes. Jason Rabbit was on against Wexford, wasn't brought on, and the rest of them haven't really been used. Killian Trayer's still coming back from injury. Sean Murphy hasn't really featured since that tip game, and Aaron Island still, even you could see with the 20s, probably just needs more games. So I'd be very shocked if any of them, maybe Rory Burke, but I'd be stunned if you see any of the rest of them against Tip.
I think you're right, Paul. But look, to a certain extent, Mihal and the management team, they're damned if they do and they're damned if they don't.
Yeah.
But I think, as John touched on it, I think if people see a performance against Tip, and a performance that, okay, you might lose the game, but you might say to yourself, okay, well, look, we have something to build on. To be quite honest with you, last January, my expectations, my hopes for Galway this year were to retain Division 1 in the league. The importance of it now, because there's a huge gap between Division 1 and Division 1A and Division 1 and Division 2. Don't mind the 1A and 1B nonsense.
Yeah.
And to come out of Leinster. We didn't come out of Leinster last year. We achieved that. We surpassed that slightly in getting to a Leinster final. Now, is it a halt now? But having maybe surpassed what realistic expectations were, now you lost a poor performance. You have another chance to redeem yourself, and this is what it's about. It's I suppose the management and the players have a chance to redeem themselves. And it'll be very interesting to see what happened. What I'm very much afraid of here is that Tipper on a roll at the moment. They won that under 20 in fantastic fashion, and they won it down in Nolan Park. They're on a roll. They'll have a crowd. They will hammer Laois on Saturday, and you'll have this. Could be 10-1 in the crowd if it's in Limerick. And you'll have this nothing, and just in case, lads, you'd ever be feeling even the slightest smidgen of sympathy for Tipperary, just listen to tip, 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 tip. So,
Yeah.
You're
There,
not wrong there.
yeah, I've been just amazed at the fallout from supporters. Actually, I'm, you know, there are just some defeats tend to just get under the skin a bit more than others and stuff like that. And Sunday seemed to be that, because I think there was a bit of hope built up beforehand. There was a bit of hope built up. Geez, could we do to Kilkenny what Kilkenny did a couple of years ago and snatch it in the most unlikely fashion? And there was almost a small bit of sort of almost a teasing aspect in that regard or whatever. And as MacDara was saying, like, it was actually, especially after watching the Munster final the previous night, it was like at a different tempo completely as well, in a half full Crow Park, not even a half full, a third full Crow Park, and all free tickets and everything. It just like a totally different competition to what Cork and Limerick had been at, and but I've just been a little bit shocked at the scale of the fallout from Galway supporters. I'm not sure were their expectations built up in a bit more in it. And the other thing, actually, I was just looking at it before and during this as well, is like, I think it was saying initially where the Leinster final is now what we used to see in the All Ireland semi final in years before or whatever, and turning up on that. And I had to look back at it's 17 years now that Galway are in Leinster Championship. And I looked at the last 17 years and the 17 years before Galway joined. And in the 17 years before Galway joined, Kilkenny won 12 Leinster titles and were runners up twice. And in the 17 years since Galway went in there, Kilkenny have also won 12 Leinster titles and have been runners-up 3 times. And really what Galway have done is replace Wexford, because prior to that, Wexford have been in 13 finals, only won 3 of them. Galway have been in 11, only won 3 of them. Nothing has changed. Kilkenny are still the top dogs in Leinster. They know how to win Leinster titles. Dublin have improved. Offaly went off, whether that had anything to do with Galway's arrival or not. So everything has just plodded along in a way there. We're now back into an Ireland quarter final where you're not you're not going into it with any great degree of momentum, because it wasn't sort of pipped a point at the end of it. It was a rip roar of a match or anything like that. It wasn't. It was a bit of a damn squib. But I still go back. I wouldn't be quite as negative as an awful lot of Galway supporters that I'm
Is the
talking
big thing
to.
there though, John, like when you consider the round robin game, we're lost by 12, we're 13 points down, and I know we got a few scores at the end and we rallied. But if you look at Sunday, is there really that much of an improvement from the first day against Kilkenny?
No, no, there isn't. And that's the whole part of it. And in many ways, you could say it's unraveled a bit more, because positions you thought, or the way you were going to use players, you
Yeah, it's
thought
later
were,
in the year you'd expect to be
yeah, you
more
thought that was
competitive.
moving into it. And there's been what, 30, 31 players used. And as we said in it, we're no nearer. We're actually further away from a definitive, what looks like the backbone of a team, and you're filling in stuff around it. But they they're not bad hurlers either at the
Yeah,
same time, and we've seen that over it. It's to just get the round players into the round holes and stuff like that, and a game plan that isn't a giveaway that the likes of Kilkenny could so easily deal with as well. And that's why I just think, because Tip aren't going to know what's coming, I think will be a bit of a help, because Galway don't know what they're going to bring to it. So I wouldn't completely write it off, but I just think, and especially in light of the way the minors and under 20s have performed this year, um, the last thing Galway needs now is a flop against Tipperary in this one, because ideally they need to win it and push on and see where they are against a Cork or something like that. But a 12-point defeat to Tipperary, yes, it was happening during the league and just like that. I think it'd make an awful long winter out of it, and we've had enough of those in the last few years.
it's the third quarter, MacDara, really, isn't it? We talk about that Kilkenny domination, but it's the third quarter where supporters don't really want to see that, where they're Galway are just being pushed away. They want to see more fight in this team.
That's the word. As John outlined there, the statistics, like nobody else scored apart from Cahill, and most of those from frees. But you had so many aimless balls struck in Kilkenny half back line. Richie Reid must have thought it was his birthday, like, because there was so many balls just lobbed in, and I'm sure he had time then to pick out players. You had Mikey Kerry scoring a point, nobody near you. Paddy Deegan scoring a point. Paddy smiles. Now Paddy's not. That's not. Paddy's not an arrogant player by any means, but I mean, I'd say, they had so much time to poke around, and then they were sending high balls on top of Hugh Lawler. Hugh Lawler is the best fullback in the country by a mile. By a mile. And sending in high balls on top of Hugh is kind of biscuits to an elephant job. But
Great high ball as well, not even
Yeah,
diagonal or anything
yeah,
to
and
make it
and
much
and
better.
and like what's really frustrating is, as John said there, like Cooney's on his game. He's winning. He's getting scores, or he's winning frees, and then no ball sent into him at all. Like, and there were a lot of kind of, and then lads going back and they'd win a ball and and the next thing you see it dropping straight into Kilkenny man. So that was very frustrating. The 20 minutes was really poor. I mean, look, be honest. If Kilkenny had won that game last Sunday, they won it by 8. If they had won it by 18 points, we couldn't really argue with it. Kilkenny
no.
had an awful lot of wides. So I mean, it was just an awful performance on the day. The few that you'd exempt to a certain extent, you'd exempt. I think you'd exempt Porrick Mannion, you'd exempt TJ Brennan, you'd exempt Dahi at the start, although Dahi faded a little bit. Then after that, you'd exempt Cahill, obviously, and I think Kevin Cooney. But after that, you're kind of struggling. You're kind of
But I
struggling to
would
get
think Conor
players.
Whelan as well,
Yeah,
Yeah,
particularly.
Yeah, but I
Yeah,
think Connor got tired in the end, just
yeah,
from yeah, and as you said, John, and you're right. These are guys who can play,
yeah.
but for some reason there was a kind of an almost as a collective non showing up on the day, and this is what. And then you see the blasted 10 minutes just to frustrate us even more as Galway
Yeah.
supporters.
I,
And
I think I think that actually vexed a lot of Galway supporters to a degree, as in we knew that was in them. Damn it to hell, they did it for a few minutes, built up our hopes again, and crash bang wallop, it's gone. And like you're saying there, Paul, in terms of third quarter, 21 minutes from half time, the first 21 minutes of the second half, 110 to 4 points, and Galway's 4 points came from frees. And I think Colin Mannion actually won two of those frees that he pointed himself in it. Like you're on a hiding if you're losing a third quarter when there's no particular wind advantage or, you know, black card or a man sent off or anything like that, when it's meant to be an even contest or whatever. And you look at Kilkenny, as you said, Owen Cody would not play. And along with that, like you'd TJ Reid, which God was a two or three free. I've never seen him miss them. There was a few others, you know, that they skied wide. They did, what, 8 wides, I think it was in the first half, you know, into the bargain. So they would feel they were fairly off it as well to a large degree into it, and yet ran out comfortable winners. Like that 30, when it was 13 points, that could have sneaked up to 20 points very quick.
Yeah.
And in fairness to Galway's credit, it didn't happen. And moving Cathal Mannion in there and Brian Concannon's goal, I thought, was well taken. And you need to create that bit of chaos. And in fairness to Concannon, he had a lot of work to do from there. But I think what was even more informative was the reaction of Owen Murphy, the Kilkenny goalkeeper, and the Kilkenny full-back line. They were livid over getting caught silly in something like that or whatever. But it was the one bit of chaos that was created in it. You got a goal out of it or whatever. The rest of what Galway were doing was so predictable. Big, long, high balls. I mean, Hugh Lawler was like it, and MacDara would remember this as well. The time Galway continued with a two-man full forward line back in, oh, geez, mid-80s, and they made an all-star out of John Crowley, one ball after another. I thought that was John Crowley playing full back for Kilkenny last Sunday. Like, it was just manna from heaven from him coming out with it or whatever. And as we said much earlier, low ball into Kevin Cooney and he was causing havoc, and yet we're plowing the thing in high. Like that just defied logic, to be quite honest.
Yeah, there's a lot of people saying maybe move Brian Concannon out to the half forward line, but like if you have Brian Concannon and Conor Whelan out there, like I think we need an outlet inside. Even if you have a Kevin Cooney, you need someone in there to help him out.
Well, you need an outlet for puck out, Paul. You
Yeah,
know, you have to have somebody where you can win a puck out, and the only it appears now the only man who is capable of winning a puck out is Conor Whelan. And Connor then he's struggling, and the opposition know that, so they're putting two players on Connor Whelan, and Connor I'd say was absolutely shagged by the time the end of that game because he'd done so much work and donkey work and this donkey work that you need to do. Like it's a workman like Kilkenny team compared to the Kilkenny team that we've 10 years plus back. This is a workman like Kilkenny team that they're not great. They're not great, but they are Kilkenny.
Absolutely.
To beat Kilkenny, you have to be twice, three times as good as them because they just have that. They're still as difficult as ever to beat. I think they're finding it harder to win some matches, but last Sunday wasn't one of those because he had a collective non-showing from the Galway lads. So it's what do you do? Do you go short with your puckouts? Do you go long with your puckouts? Who'll be in goals? That's a question. Who'll be in goals the next day?
probably
Will Derek
Derek
be brought
back, is
back
it?
in if he's back from suspension? Will there be what sort of a puck-out strategy will be worked? As John said, who will be playing where? And I'd say if the three of us now sat down and picked our individual teams, there's no way we'd
Yeah.
come up with the same team. Where should such and such play, or who would you have playing? So that is the
As we've
difficulty.
said many times, that can work to their
It
advantage.
can.
Because equally so, Tip will now need to lay out their own team to go out and win it rather than try and stop Galway like Kilkenny did or whatever. They're not going to know where it's coming from it. Like you talk about short puckouts where you have somebody like TJ Brennan on his game, surely you go to the player that's in form in a lot of that. Like, Brian Concannon full forward never struck me as a ball winning a high ball winning player. Outfield and full backs going around them anything like that. It's there's very few full forwards that can thrive on that sort of stuff anymore. But to a degree now they've an opportunity to, lay out the cards again.
But
And
there's three of us here now. So just as a matter of interest, what this diamond I'm talking about, 6, 8, 9, 11. Who would you have, John, At 6, 8,
I
9, or 11.
I would go with Gavin Lee at centre back. I would go with Keenan Fahy and Tom Monaghan at midfield. And I would look centre forward. Gosh, where do you go? Do you go Cathal Mannion or do you go a Conor Whelan is probably more effective on that wing? Um, like I don't think you can go and you know put Conor Whelan or put Gavin Lee in as your centre back, a player who's been there now for several years and came in so young into it. And you sort of say he's your centre back all year, and now reaching what could be your last match of the year, you're pulling him out of there
Yeah, I agree.
after, you know, not a, not the most dreadful performance imaginable in any shape or form in that. I'd start with Lee at centre back, put Fahy Monaghan midfield, um, centre forward. I don't know what you do. You can't. I think the last day showed you can't have both Cathal Mannion and Conor Whelan. Not you need one of them in the full forward line if you're going to be effective, and especially when you look at the ball, what will be happening at the other end, and the emphasis Tipperary will be putting on their full forward line to deliver scores.
Do we put Evan Island 11? Throw him in. I know we haven't seen him, but we're struggling for scores. We need people who can score. They give something for Ronan Mayer to think about too.
Evan is a great free taker, but from play. I think this is part of the reason he wasn't really contributing as much from play as they might like. That I would. This is the gas thing. We're different. I wouldn't play Gavin at 6. I think
Right.
he hasn't the presence. I thought he had. I would. I'm going short term here. I would actually put Porrick out to 6 because he's used to playing at 6 for the club a lot of the time. He's a very solid defender. I would put Gavin out to midfield with maybe Tom Monaghan. Do you know why? Do you know who I would actually try at centre forward? Maybe for a slight curveball to see would it work, and that's Kevin Cooney.
Could do. He's done a lot for you mentioned Pádraig Mannion there. Like we've spoken a lot about Conor Mannion and how brilliant he's been all year. The reality is with Pádraig Mannion, you could give him any one of the jerseys from 2 to 7,
Yeah,
and he would perform magnificently in them, which is a fantastic achievement for a player in the modern game that is so versatile in any of those. He will cover a hole for you anywhere, but it's what are you going to get, as you said, from that diamond? How are you going to win puckouts? Because that's probably the biggest failing from last Sunday, that they were turning over their own ball straight off. You're immediately on the back foot. Um, is there is there a wing forward there that would his sole job would be to win puckouts? That
Rory Burke.
comes
Do you
off
go
that.
curveball with Jason Rabbit?
Well, we said it a few times here. What have you to lose by at least trying something like that? You
What
know,
about Rory Burke?
could be worse. We don't know at this level.
Yeah.
Straight.
Well,
You're
I'm
more
just
familiar with
thinking
Rory
like,
Burke now. Is he a good ball winner?
yeah.
Yeah,
I'm just thinking
absolutely.
he's played. He's featured in a few minutes, so I don't think it's
He
out of
played
the
the first game,
question
didn't
that
he? Didn't he play against Tipperary in the league? He did, I think.
he did. Yeah, and he came on for a few minutes in Nolan
Yeah.
Park, against Kilkenny in the first game of the round robin. Yeah,
Well,
Well, you
both
know what Einstein said.
his father and his uncle were thrown in at the deep end as goalkeepers back in the day, and both of them delivered as well, right through it or whatever. So the pedigree is good there. So I just think they've nothing to lose by trying something different without being, dropping 7 players and bringing 7 in and all of that. They could, there's a few things there because I've said it a few times. There's more in this. There's more in this Galway team or this Galway squad than we saw last Sunday, and I think that's what really has frustrated people.
Yeah.
I think with you, I'd agree with you, John. I think they're going to stick with Gavin at 6. I think they see this as a long-term project. When Michal's obviously overgoing, I think they're going to stick with him at 6. But there's been ups and downs throughout the year, and I think they'll stick with him too. I think Bronan Glennon has a high chance of coming into midfield, given the energy he brought when he came on too, and maybe someone like an Evan Island at 11
Yeah.
just for the freeze, and I think he can add a few scores too at 11 if you bring him into the
I,
game.
I think as well what a lot saw last Sunday, because you get it with a lot of Galway players in the last 6 7 years. They're showing great momentum. They're going for a while, and then suddenly it just doesn't happen. And I think what a lot of people might have saw last Sunday might be a greater appreciation of what Henry Shefflin had to deal with for the last few years and Shane O'Neill before that, because it was very, very similar. It was a very similar outcome last Sunday to a lot of what happened Galway in the championship over the last, 4, 5, 6 years as well. So, in one sense, there's nothing new, but I just think the expectation level was cranked up a bit. So let's see against Tipperary. Hopefully it will turn in that.
Yeah, Anthony Burns is someone too that could come into the attack. I know he only got a few minutes, but he has shown that goal threat throughout the year, even in the Leinster Championship game against Antrim. He was impressive.
Paul, I think the problem is I think, and this is why there was hope. I was hopeful. And when I heard Owen Cody wasn't on the 26th, it increased my hope by about 10%. But
Yeah.
I think in hindsight is brilliant, of course. We thought they were getting momentum, and they were gathering some momentum, but they were gathering momentum against pretty average teams. Like Dublin just didn't show up at all in Parnell Park. Wexford were quite poor and quite naive against Galway, and Antrim and Offaly were just not up to it. So we were improving, but we were improving against to a certain extent mediocrity. And I don't want to be too harsh on, but that's this year the challenge that came from Wexford, from Dublin, from Antrim, and from Offaly was pretty mediocre. And I think maybe we got a small bit, and I put myself in the same category. We got carried away. We have maroon blood, we haven't red blood, and
Yeah.
it's we're sick of losing to Kilkenny in Leinster finals. Sick of losing.
That's what I was alluding to there. Will say nothing has changed. That has been the Leinster Championship for most of the time. Galway have been in it. Now you have the come the cropper every now and again against Dublin or the scoring difference and stuff like that. But apart from 1 or 2 years, it really the what Wexford and Dublin have offered, and they have been really the only two challengers. Maybe in the coming years, Offaly will become a challenger in all of that. But by and large, it's been a mediocre championship. Kilkenny have been the standard bearers in it. Galway are getting to the final. Dublin are doing whatever. But like Kildare are coming into it next year. They'll be the 13th team in the Leinster Championship since Galway were in there. And you take Galway, Kilkenny, and to a lesser extent Wexford and Dublin out of it. And the other nine are playing for relegation sort of any year they're in it, whether it's Westmeath or Carlow or London or Kerry. I was shocked actually when I added up all the teams that was in it. I think it's only Longford, Louth and Wicklow are the only teams from Leinster that haven't featured in it. And then you have four from the outside in it. But call it what it is, lads, it's a poor championship.
Yeah,
And
no, it has been.
especially when you measure it up to what has been served year on year in Munster. And let's not forget that since Galway won the All Ireland, isn't it every All Ireland has gone to Munster in that time? It happens for a reason into it. And we're now playing a Munster team in all probability coming up in it. But it's equally you win it, you're suddenly into practically nothing to lose All Ireland semi final. Um, and suddenly we're all getting our hopes up again, and we're thinking back to those days of shocking.
Too much hope is terrible, John, as you well
Yeah,
know.
we just never learn. We just never learn in the
No,
whole
it's a
the
killer.
whole
It's a killer.
lot
Yeah,
of it.
yeah.
Yeah. There's
I,
definitely
I do I do agree though, MacDara, what you said earlier on, that I think Mihal probably will see this as a chance for the players to redeem themselves. I actually, as much as we're discussing, I don't think there's going to be 7, 8 changes or wholesale changes as some people might think.
There may not, but I will say, and I think we'll have a performance, but the danger is that like Tip are coming,
Yeah,
at underage, everything else, right? The minors didn't do well this year, but they won a minor last year. They've beaten Kilkenny and Nolan Park in two All Ireland finals down at Nolan Park. It's killing them in Kilkenny, but they're winning. They're winning colleges. They won that colleges this year. They're three different schools, one Harty. Liam Cahill has them on side again. The support is coming, and like there's no other team that would love, and if they could beat Galway by 25 points and they're winning by 24, they'd go as hard for
keep
the
going.
25th as
Yeah.
they'd go. And the danger is that if Galway don't turn up to a certain extent, that you could be as John alluded to earlier on, you could be getting another fair
Yeah.
trimming, and that would do an awful lot of damage. To a certain extent, there's damage limitation here. There's a chance for redemption. There's a chance for it's not unwinnable now. It's not unwinnable.
Right.
Tip are coming, but maybe they're not quite there yet. If Galway turn up, everybody played as well as they can and as well as they have in the past. They're not without a chance here. But being realistic, I would be calling. Let's be honest, he's going to be Tip. I would be
Yeah.
having Galway's outsiders against Tip.
But you mentioned there, Paul, it's a chance for Galway players to redeem themselves. But I think this is also the Galway management would feel they need to redeem themselves as well in it. They can't be happy with what happened last Sunday. They can't be, with so many positions having to be changed, you know, reacting slowly to a sweeper system that was almost inevitable going to happen. I think they would feel, and I think most people would feel around it, that they have more to offer than was shown last Sunday, and it's they will want, if redeem is not too strong a word, they will want to set a record straight as well. And I know we hear it time and again from managers and coaches in all sports, so we're not taking, what we're shown in training onto the pitch and all that and all this sort of stuff. That may be true, but it's also a cop-out because you should be taking it from training if it's happening that because that's where the hope builds up from and the momentum builds up from as well. Um, so I'm sure they're itching and I'm sure they're glad to have the opportunity coming as well against a team that is certainly on the rise, but not at the level of Cork and Limerick. And I think we saw a lot of that in Munster as well. So it's a big day out for Galway hurling on many ways, and I do hope Galway support gets behind them, but I suspect they won't. It's a long time since I've picked up the scale of negativity, and I think it's an overreaction, to be honest. Um, but there's a lot riding on this one, and not just for this. As MacDara was saying there, like you look at what Tip have done at minor and under 20. They haven't just won All Irelands, but they've won them. They've won them with a fair bit of dash. They've won them with a massive momentum into it, great forward stuff. And you look at where Galway underage has been in the last couple of years and stuff like that. So I won't quite say there's a big crossroads in this, but there is an element to that as well that there's a fair bit riding on this game, and so there should be in a championship. But I don't think it's just even at senior. I think Galway hurling needs a performance and indeed needs a win against in this one. Tall order, but not beyond them. Not beyond them if they can get their house in order for this one.
I'd love
The,
to
the
be
big
flying the
thing
wall
is
at the training
delivery, though,
tonight.
isn't it?
Tonight is probably the first training session since Sunday, and it would be love to be flying the wall to that now because I think there could be it could be the making of them for the fortnight, but it'll be a hard session in every way. They have to look at themselves and I think everybody, as you said, John, management and
Yeah.
players, they'll all have to look at themselves and look at themselves
Yeah,
hard.
but you need controlled aggression into it as well. You need a game plan. You need to be intelligent about what you go. This isn't breaking down, dressing room doors and going out. You need to plan. You need to work to your strengths right through all of that and deliver what I think anyone sees Galway Club Hurling sees, knows what these lads are capable of. But really, they haven't been doing it in recent years when it's really come to it. And it's you need to approach it properly now as well.
It reminds me of the story one time, John. There was a Hasker when they were still a Hasker now. They hadn't joined up with Fohan at the time, and they were playing under 21
Did
match,
we
and they had
take
a
me
lot
an
of the
hour to
previous
get a
year's
Haskell
team
mention, Johnson?
that had gone to a final anyway, so they were quite hopeful. So one of the senior stars was taking his first foray into management, so they were all waiting. My brother Sean, if you remember him, he was playing. So anyway, they were waiting for the words of wisdom from the new manager, as well as his first step into management. So he lads, he says, I have only one thing to say to you, and he bet the table with the hurl. He says, go out there, he says, and hurl like fuck. And as Sean says, they did. They were beaten by 15 points. So
No, I think there's more to it. There's more to it than this, and they have this week, which isn't a lot. And I think really what they need to do more so than anything else is channel the hurt of underperforming, both on the pitch and on the sideline, and deliver, I think, what both management and players are capable of doing. And if they deliver that, even if it doesn't deliver a win, I think they will have Galway support behind them to go for next year and stuff like that. But they need to justify them, deliver a performance that's justifiable to themselves.
Talk about deliver there. I just think the delivery. I just think that's what's annoying supporters because we've seen it so much over
Yeah.
the last while. It's just the delivery of ball inside to the forwards. It just if you can see an improvement in that, there's something to latch onto.
Yeah, but it's
Yeah,
easier,
and
easier
look,
said
no,
than
nobody
done.
goes out
Yeah.
deliberately to play badly.
Yeah.
It's these guys, and these guys have
Mm,
put so much work into
yeah.
it since the start of the year, and we have to, and they're amateurs. These are all things that sometimes as supporters and spectators, we can throw the blame on them a little bit too quickly. And I think you're
Yeah.
right, John. There has been no overreaction. It's just that I suppose it's the inconsistency is maddening. It's maddening, you know.
But you're not going to deliver a ball into your forwards unless you have won that primary one further out. So if you're under pressure winning your puck out and it's now gone back in sort of a half pass back to a half back to deliver and you're delivering under pressure, your chances of delivering provision or precision ball keeps getting reduced into it. So you need the basics in it. You need to win most of your own puckouts and you build from there, whether that's going short as Kilkenny did, right on the 20-meter line. Jeez, it was borderline a lot the last even whether it was outside it. And you build through the phases from there. But you need to be controlling stuff. You need ball coming up first time for that to happen. It's an accumulation of stuff with it. Suddenly, you often watch Limerick playing, it seems they're forever on the ball. It's not. It's because they've just worked it so quickly through it that they're not delivering the final pass under pressure. You take out the 2 minutes or the two 10-minute spells that Galway hurled last week, the first 10 minutes and that brilliant spell in it, and look at the precision ball they were delivering and able to deliver because they weren't, it wasn't a half back sort of with someone swinging out from under pressure. They managed to create that space, create that. Maybe people are saying, "Oh, Kilkenny," or stepped off it. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. But it's that sort of level of it, and it's the sort of thing that I would expect the likes of Eamon O'Shea in particular to be. That's what he brought that tip team way back in it as well, was just to create the space you're delivering precision ball, and you'll create the chaos where it matters to build from there. But easier said than done. Easier for us to look in from the outside and say that. But hopefully we will. Hopefully we will, and you'd never know what would happen.
Yeah. I think for supporters to remember too, like when we lost to Kilkenny a few years ago in the Leinster final with the Killian Buckley goal, there was heartbreak there and probably Galway at a low point after that result, but they really grouped and recovered and went and bet Tipperary two
But
weeks
Galway
later.
gave a performance that day against Kilkenny. They were hard luck. It was a
Yeah.
sickening way to
Yeah, but
lose.
still, like I think they were fairly low. Like you give
They
them
were low, but I
circumstances,
don't. I
they
don't
lost.
think. I think supporters were still behind them and realised, flipping. It was horrible what happened in it. Balance of play, Galway deserved to win that match. Balance of play last Sunday, Galway were lucky to be inside double figures. I think that's the difference.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is some talks about a double header in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, and then there's other talks about
Galway should refuse to even consider going down to Páirc Uí Chaoimh. Go
yeah
through Tipperary to go down to Cork to
the, the
facilitate the 30 million debt. No way.
Don't know what way
the
you
only
drive,
reason there
Paul,
is
but we won't
talks of
go
that
through
though is
Tip.
because Tipperary are involved and Limerick will be involved more than likely with Dublin. So for four teams, it
Two
has to
single
be.
headers, one in Limerick, one in Thurles.
Yeah. Well, if they're to do a double header, that's the talks of where it could be. But yeah, it definitely makes more sense to have Galway and Tip in the Gaelic ground. So we'll have to see how that one that one unfolds. Before I finish up, lads, MacDara just on Kildare, like what a win for them, but plenty of Galway links to the Kildare success. Eamon O'Shea's son Conor O'Shea involved in the
Yeah.
backroom team at Kildare, and then David Qualter, a man with plenty of Galway links as well.
Yeah, and I was actually at their first game against Kerry. I was working for Redland Wells at it. And if either of the two of you told me that day that they were going to win the Joe Mac, I'd have started laughing. I'd have actually had you committed to Bridget's, I'd say, because they were, it was a very poor game. They never got going. I was talking to Connor afterwards, and he said the killer at the time before this year, Kildare never won a game in the Joe McDonncha competition. Never won a game in the Joe McDonncha competition. And they had really earmarked the Kerry one to get their first win. They lost by a point. Kerry got a winner in the last second. But it was a poor game. The conditions weren't great on the day, but you couldn't see them that day. you couldn't see them coming near Carlow or Laois or Westmeath. But they were bet. And then I was kind of a bit worried last Saturday for them. I have a brother living up there and two nephews, and they've been very involved with Nace and everything else. Because they had beaten Laois so comprehensively in the group game, I said, well, Laois will come back from this, and then the disappointment of losing last year's final. But I think there's a bit of the fact that another Laois player left, and Roland left at the start of the year, and there was a Chad Wire, he left the panel last week. So obviously there was a bit of unrest in Laois, and that seemed to manifest itself. And they got the great start, got the goal, soft goal for Laois. By the way, that double save by the Laois goalkeeper,
Yeah,
unbelievable,
tremendous.
Yeah.
unbelievable. Particularly the second save. But what a win for Kildare, and it's great. It's great to think that Galway will probably be travelling from Newbridge,
Yeah.
and David Coulter, he'll meet all his relatives. They'll all come up for that one anyway. So
Well,
it's great to see them. It's great to see a new team, and you'd hope that they could sustain it. But it's difficult. It's going to be difficult.
but in many ways, Mac, they're not a new team. We remember them playing in Leinster playing 1980 when Galway won the All Ireland. They beat Kildare in the All Ireland quarter final that year, and a certain PJ Qualter was a key, or sorry, had been in 75, and that's his grandson. That's David. That's the top scorer for Kildare. But like there is a tradition of it there. I think where they've benefited from with the population boost and the work that's been done on the ground. And there has to be a real prospect, and hopefully they will survive in there. But they're building on a tradition that a small handful have managed to keep alive there over the years in it. And I remember back Tommy Carew was actually
He,
a
he was a
great
dual player,
forward
yeah, he was,
or
and
whatever.
Pat Mangan.
Absolutely, so that it's there, and if hurling is to expand, I know they're talking about plenty of areas where it's not doesn't exist, but places that have a tradition, if they can develop it further, like Kildare, and build on that, it can only be good for hurling. It really can only be good for it.
Just before we finish then, lads, the club championship draw took place last night. It's up for anyone who isn't aware. Galway Senior Hurling Championship draw. Group A, Cullen, Athenry, Gort, St. Thomas's. Group B, Loughrea, Kilkenny, Craughwell, Clymer Daly. Group C, which is probably one of the toughest groups, Ardrahan, Castlegar, Turlockmore, Clarenbridge. And Group D, Captagal, Tommy Larkins, Sarsfields, and Oranmore Mary. So another tough group there in Group D of the Senior Hurling Championship. In Group B, then in the Senior B Hurling Championship, Group A, Ballindereen, Lee Mellows, Teen Aberdeenry, and Kilnadima Leitrim. And Group B, Port Pierce's, Mulla, Ahascra and Port Tumna. Then in the Intermediate Hurling Championship, Ceylon, Athenry, Meelick Aircourt, Skahana, Montbellion, Law. Group B, Craughwell, Abbeynockmoy, Clymer, Cairnmore. Group C, Ballygare, Annadown, Clarenbridge, Kinvara. And Group D, Kilbeaconty, Beha, Rahune Newcastle, and Turlockmore. Just on that, lads, the intermediate championship this year is going to be fascinating because if you don't reach the quarterfinal this year, the intermediate hurling championship, you're ultimately going to end up a junior club for 2026.
But for the club championship in Galway, a good friend of mine from Clare, and he's a great admirer of club hurling in Galway, and he keeps saying to me, we'd be regularly talking, he says, why, he says, can't Galway replicate their club hurling, he says, when they put on a county jersey? You see fantastic, and the massive crowds that attend the games at Galway Club Championship. It's a great club championship, but certainly in the senior there, Group C is the group of death.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the
Yeah,
group. It's,
I'm not so sure it's a great championship. We've produced brilliant
okay,
winners and at All Ireland club level, but I think I think there are too many teams in it, and there's not enough jeopardy. And there is a huge number of games there that there's really not,
nothing
championship
at
stuff
stake.
riding on. And in terms of developing players that you want to win in Croke Park in tight
Yeah.
matches against Kilkenny or whatever, I think I think the championship would be better served and Galway would be better served by a tighter club championship. Where instead of 5 teams or whatever in a group, that there's
Yeah.
4, that there's jeopardy involved in it. And I've gone along and covered many of these, and it's like league games. It's not. I
It's
know.
sort of the 3 teams coming out of a 4-team group, which is the lack of jeopardy
Yeah,
there.
it's almost like the football groups at the moment. You can nearly go through. But I don't think like it's a brilliant championship, and the pride that is in those clubs, right down to junior and everything, indisputable, and the amount of brilliant champions it's produced. But in terms of producing potential All Ireland senior winners with Galway, I think they'd be better served with jeopardy at a much earlier stage in the Galway Championship. The
So
crowds will be able to come for.
take out the preliminary quarterfinals, you're saying, for starters.
Yeah, or just even or even that group stage, so that uh, devise a championship where, okay, you can lose one game and you're
Yeah.
not gone, but lose a second in all probability that's you out the door or whatever. Whereas at the moment you could actually go and risk.
There's been so many mismatches in the preliminary quarterfinals last year in senior.
Absolutely,
Like
absolutely. And
they've
then you
been
have the
hammered.
senior A, senior B. It's brilliant. There's so many teams there, but the reality of it is senior A is senior, senior B is intermediate.
Yeah.
They're the grades. It's brilliant
Well,
as all.
lads, if you think that's bad, this is the current setup in Waterford this year. You could lose 7 championship games, win your 8th, and you're senior again next year.
And how are Waterford doing at senior inter-county level and getting out of Munster and stuff like that?
Exactly.
You
Yeah.
know, it's not completely linked, but it's not without a link into it. I just think too many players. You get to a county semi-final. It's in November. The best will in the world. Wet days, dark days.
Yeah.
It's tough bloody hurling. The whole lot of it. I just think have a jeopardy in it. If we're going to start championships in August, have serious jeopardy in the games that take place during September. You know, okay, you can
True.
have one bad off day, have a second one, good luck. You're gone from it. And I just think that, and especially given the quality of the teams that are there, it would be such a better championship is probably, and I think we'd end up with better players coming on to intercount the Galway senior team as a result of it.
You know this now. You're on the ground there. Who's going to win the Galway Senior Championship this year?
Sherlock Moore.
We say that every year. I
I
think
think this is the year.
I think Loughrea will have got a huge boost from having won it. They have a quality team there. They didn't back it up when they won it before. They've gone through a lot of heartbreak in it. Thurlockmore have to be there or thereabouts. Right off, Thomas is at your pearl. So you have three potential ones there coming through. And you have a lot
Sarsfields?
of, hmm?
Sarsfields?
You've Sarsfields, you've Claredon Bridge.
Yeah.
You know, you have a lot
Captagon
of
as well.
teams coming through there into it. Your Thurlock Lock Rays should be topping that
Yeah.
pile with it. But we're going to go through an awful lot. I won't call them meaningless games because, of course, there's not when there's so much pride at stake in them now. But we're going to go through games that could, I think, would be far better if there was a bit more jeopardy involved in it. And I think it would enhance those teams and enhance the players that are coming from it. But if I was to put my shilling down, I'd put it on Loughrea. And if I had a second bet, I'd throw it on Thurlock.
Each
Yeah.
way.
Each way, sort of thing.
I think Loughrea winning will actually give Turlock motivation because they've seen someone now lifted outside of Thomas's over the last few years because they were seeing Thomas's win it there for the last few years. So that should give them motivation.
Yeah, and they're a super team, Thurlock.
Yeah.
They're absolutely, and would fully. They've had a lot of heartbreak, the more than Loughrea had, and stuff like that as well. But yeah, they'll be look at. Let's hope we're not talking about the Galway Club Championship for many months yet, because
Yeah.
there's
I
so
hope we're not
point.
talking about it in 3 or 4 weeks. Great stuff. That's all we do have time for on today's podcast. As we were saying during the podcast, it's likely now that it's going to be Galway tipping Saturday week in the All Ireland quarter final. Venue yet to be confirmed for that one. So, but it looks like it will be early next week. We'll have a venue for that one. But MacDara and John, thanks a million for your time.
No
Pleasure.
bother.